All right, so brief intro. My name is Hamzeh Hammad. I'm a student over at the University of Virginia. I'm a fourth year. I'm doing a 3+1. So my undergraduate degree is in computer science, and my plus one or my master's is in systems engineering. I've had like three really cool internships in the past. I started off as a software engineer, hard pivoted into product, which is really neat. Internships went from like different consulting jobs, and most recently I worked at an AI higher education platform company, which is really neat, called Boodlebox. And I like to salsa dance, and I like Lord of the Rings, and that's kind of me.
So your question for today is, do you know, first of all, do you know that OpenAI just launched their browser Atlas?
Yes,
So
I do know about that.
imagine you're reporting to Sundar Pichai, and what do you want to do with your Chrome browser as OpenAI is launching Atlas?
Okay, so that's the question, yes. How exactly would I approach Atlas as the CEO of Microsoft, or if I had to make a proposal to the CEO of Microsoft?
CEO of Google.
Google, wrong guy, my bad. Same thing.
I'm gonna end this meeting right away.
Same thing. It's fine. All is well. I was thinking Google anyway. All right. Can I just have a quick second to think of a few questions to further clarify, I guess, my goals?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, I guess my first question is, would I or should I make the assumption that uh, Google is interested in investing in multiple AI agents, or is that something that kind of we're trying to stray away from? Are we trying to use resources that Google already has, like certain LLMs like Gemini, or should the assumption of, I guess, new innovations like AI agents be a consideration?
Mm. We don't have any restrictions or directions because you're reporting to PTI, so you have
Mhm.
enough control in terms of what direction you want to go for. But we just don't want like OpenAI to consume too much market from our browser. So that is like the business goal that we are going with.
All right, perfect. So, in terms of our goals is to basically remain dominant in the current market and not allow OpenAI to eat up our market share. Okay, and is our focus going to be solely on OpenAI, or should we also talk about other competitors similar to Perplexity?
We think the biggest threat might be OpenAI. Like, I don't mind you talking about other competitors as well. Yeah, you feel free to like analyze the competitive landscape as long as it makes sense to our users.
All right, perfect. So, as Google, we already know that the mission is to kind of have access to all the world's information and make it clear, organized, and available to the masses, right? And so the reason why we'd be big fans in trying to make our browser stand up to the competition would be to kind of retain that dominance and continue being the deliverer of information, which OpenAI and Perplexity have tried to, I guess, grab a hold of. And if we were to do a small competitor analysis, ChatGPT or OpenAI it is a really recent player to the game. As you mentioned earlier, they just came out with Atlas a few weeks ago. In comparison to Perplexity, which has been a thing for over a year now, use multiple LLMs as kind of their, I guess, advantage, right? They use multiple LLMs. They are very much what many would consider a rapper, and the CEO always talks about that. He's like, "Hey, being a rapper doesn't matter. We always, everything's a rapper at the end of the day." And so that's kind of what gives Perplexity its edge, as well as I guess, early player advantage because they're the first in the game, right? And the way Google responded to Perplexity, right? And I guess ChatGPT too, before it launched its own browser, was through installing Gemini auto summaries during every single query, which is neat. And that's how they kind of responded to that. And also, they added the entire new Google AI option instead of like the search option. So if you go into the browser immediately, that's the first option you see. So it kind of forwards people's attention to that. And so those are the changes made to combat perplexity. In terms of how well that worked, I'd make the assumption that it worked pretty well just because Google already had the attention placed on it because at the end of the day, that's what everyone uses, right? And Perplexity was this thing that you'd find on LinkedIn or something you'd find in startup spaces. Everyone's using that there. And that's kind of how I found out about it through like my computer science friends, right? And the majority of people are not STEM users. So when they go on Google, they don't go, oh, there's this new browser that came out. They go, oh, Google has this new AI feature, right? Versus OpenAI, which has the attention of all these people, right? So they're able to launch something everyone listens. Because right now, uh, uh, mm, over like 500 million people use ChatGPT, so everyone kind of pays attention to their launches, right? And so Perplexity would be the oldest competitor, and Google's already, I guess, replied in kind to what Perplexity does. But in terms of OpenAI, like I just mentioned a second ago, they have a huge base, right? And they're kind of known as the AI giants. So that's kind of how they're going to progress. I guess draw out and eat up market share from Google. They might not have as much attention as Google, right? Because at the end of the day, ChatGPT may have the largest or the fastest ascent to a large user base, but they still don't have Google's user base, right? So the attention Google still retains, but OpenAI's releases still disrupt the market, right? So that's kind of how OpenAI can target, or I guess that's their biggest way to eat up Google market share. In terms of features, can I just have a quick second to go into Atlas's features and also how Google can reply and to actually come up with a proposal? One of the lead, I guess, advantages that OpenAI's Atlas has, which is something very similar to Perplexity, that is do it better, according to many experts, would be the ability to cross multiple tabs with certain queries, right? If I ask for a certain thing, you'd be able to reference, say, like 6 different tabs, come up with a summary, come up with what I want, maybe draft an email, something along those lines. And what this kind of hints at is the average buyer, in this instance, are users who are just individuals trying to access information, right? It kind of goes back to Google's mission of trying to access information as efficiently as possible. They want to be able to do so with the least amount of friction, right? And so if we were to look at OpenAI's capabilities and say, hey, they have ChatGPT, they have a bunch of APIs, and now they have this new Chrome browser, right? Now, what does Google have, right? If our goal is to make it so we can do more by doing less, we can unlock Google's ecosystem. At the end of the day, Google has a ginormous ecosystem, right? They have Gmail, they have Google Docs, they have Drive, they have everything along those lines. So we have way more to access, right? And we have, I guess, many, many years of Google data on not really data, but I guess Google's investment on each individual. Like based off personal experience, I've been using Google Classroom since I was like in 5th grade, right? So I've been using Google forever. I am locked in on that ecosystem, right? I'm on my Mac right now, which is Apple, of course, but at the end of the day, everything here is Google related, right? And you should see how people crashed out, I guess, when our school moved to Outlook. And so I guess in terms of coming up with a proposal on how to react to Atlas's abilities in the market, or how to react to Atlas's, I guess, release, would be to make it so Google would be able to reference Google Drive as well as Gmail, and maybe even have make profiles if allowed or if given permission to profiles of every single user in the Google ecosystem. These emails are extremely old. I'm pretty sure the average Google email or Gmail is, I think, 3 or 4 years old. I forgot the specific statistic, but there's so much data associated with each and every single one of them that we have so much information that I guess can be started off with that ChatGPT still has to gather, right? We already know their names. We usually know their age based off of their sign up information. We know what sector they're in, right? If given permission to all this data, we have access to it, and we can make it so small, tiny tasks could be made far easier. Hey, I have an essay on XYZ, or I want to draft an email to blah, 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 and it can access your drive, it can access your notes, and all of that stuff. And I think that's kind of the competitive advantage we should aim for, the ability to reference multiple parts of the Google ecosystem, which ChatGPT doesn't have. That kind of hints back at, I guess, the power of buyers. At the end of the day, do you want to switch to a completely different ecosystem if you're already so embedded in one of them, right? And I guess Google could leverage that. Like, hey, I've already invested so much of my life into the Google ecosystem. I'd rather not go into ChatGPT and make it learn everything. And this is kind of the problem with very early chats, right? You'd hate the fact that you'd have to constantly feed it information. And so this is kind of reflective of that early AI problem of really small like reference capabilities. And so I guess Google can fight with that because it has so much data on each every person. And that would be the proposal I give the Sindar or the CEO of Google. Hey, take advantage of our, what's it called? Of our vast database and ecosystem. Give us the ability to reference all of that when we do menial tasks. And that's how I find, or that's how we can, I guess, fight Google in this entire battle?
Let me reframe the question a little bit. So you talk about reference Google ecosystem, which is kind of leveraging Google's advantage and also personalized experience. These are more towards to what you just talk about from OpenAI Atlas, which is cross multi
Um,
tabs, right? There's the other
mm,
side of the Atlas feature, which is providing this agentic experience. And you can basically leverage Atlas to do tasks on websites. Do you
mm.
think that for this feature, it is going to be popular? And is it necessary for Google to act on this side of the feature as well?
I genuinely see no reason as to why Google shouldn't, I guess, pursue the same capabilities with agents being able to actually complete tasks. I'd say one of the biggest reasons why Atlas even does that is because Perplexity showed so much success with it, right? And at the end of the day, that's the game with these big fan companies. So monkey see, monkey do, right? If someone does something very good or very well and people find it very popular, at the end of the day, Perplexity, I use Perplexity all the time, say with my friends, and their user base was skyrocketing until I think Atlas came out. So. But I see no reason as to why people shouldn't use it. And in terms of popularity, it's kind of been proven already with the first AI browser. And in terms of actual usage, like going about your daily life, I already use ChatGPT to draft my essays, right? Or to draft my emails. So why wouldn't I be able to say, hey, do this on the side, and I could look over it instead of prompting it multiple times with information that should already be accessible in whatever database or that should be taking, I guess, personal information for myself or be gathering that information that Google already has, right? A lot of this stuff are like, hey, for example, yesterday, right? Yesterday's Friday. Yeah. I had to do a small little reflection for an entrepreneurship class, right? And I had to talk about how what my thoughts were on the previous classes for this past week, right? Instead of going into ChatGPT and prompting it multiple times about what was actually in the class, right, and what were my opinions on it, I could have just referenced my doc, right, which was on Google Drive because everyone takes notes using stuff like Google Drive. And I could have been like, hey, answer this question. It would have printed it out. I would have looked over it and we would have called it a day in comparison to me having to continuously prompt it. So it's something that already exists and people already use. So why not make the process easier? And these companies are doing it, so why shouldn't Google? And we have surely have the capabilities to do so, considering we already have a very strong LLM, and Google's kind of been, well, was beforehand the AI leader, right? Until OpenAI came out. So I see no reason why we can't, I guess, copy.
My next question is, if you are designing the agentic experience for, let's just call it Chrome AI browser, who are you targeting and what type of pain point are you solving? And also, how can we do it the state of art better than any of the competitors in this market?
All right, would I be able to make the assumption that this is something we want to relay out pretty quickly, or is it something that would be a project that I guess, or the release of the new agent system for Chromium? Do you think that'd be a project that would be released like for a year from now, or something we'd want out as soon as possible, just to get our feet in I guess, the fight with Atlas and Perplexity?
Mhm. I think I would be interested in both. I do want you to have features that we can quickly launch, and also I'm very curious about your long-term roadmap as well.
Yeah, so based off that, I guess I could define a few missions. So our overall market mission is to make it so the number of Google Chrome users remains the same or if it even goes up. And in terms of, I guess, the new agentic experience, it'd be to have more agent queries in total, right? For per individual user. So the average user uses the agent more, therefore success. I guess that's kind of the mission I'm trying to go towards. Would you have any, I guess, are we on the same page about that? Do you have any critiques, I guess?
I think this sounds good.
Could I take another few seconds to look into, I guess, user segmentation? In terms of user segments, I decided to split it based off of how people are based currently in their careers or what point in the career they are. And I split it into, or the initial segments I have, where people were still in school. And you could think about that from people who are in kindergarten up until college, right? Professionals, so people who are actually well into their careers. And then we have, I guess, the older folk or people who are retired, right? And the reason I split it in that certain direction or a certain way is just because that's how different people use, I guess, both AI and Google. People in school you mostly use it for career, not career related things, education related stuff. People who are well into their professional career use it for things in relation to their jobs, and people who are older use it for, I guess, more miscellaneous things, things that are in relation to recreational activities. Most of the people are retired. If I had to make a prioritization about which segment I target first as Google, I think I'd target people who are still in school, so like students. And the reason for that is simply because Google has so many current deals with academic institutions that this is just a really easy user segment to target. And the same situation I've heard, I guess the line of thought is what, get them while they're young, right? That's kind of how my last internship's head of product talked about how if you get people using something when they're really young, they still want to use it when they're older. And again, as I said, I made my Gmail account when I was in elementary school, so I guess it fits, right? And yes, this might have a smaller market share than a young professional, but just because they're so easier, they're much easier to reach, and I guess they're way more malleable in terms of what they use ecosystem wise. I think it's like the perfect, um, they're the perfect demographic to target. From that, I guess I can look into a few pain points, or I guess the user journey that these young students or just students, I guess, will go into or have to deal with when using an agentic experience. Can I just take a few moments to go into that? All right, so very clear pain points with dealing with students would be accessing certain memory, right? So it doesn't have all the information about you as a student. Having to guide the end result. So when you get your paragraph for an essay, or if you get your email that you ask XYZ agents to create, you need to be able to know that it's worthwhile sending, I guess, and it doesn't need, I guess, overhead or you to check it multiple times, and the ability to complete complex tasks, which a lot of agentic agents kind of, I mean, a bunch of agents struggle with. And so if we were to put that into, I guess, a user journey, right? So before using this agent, I'd like to, as a student, log in. I'd like it to access my ecosystem. During use, I'd like it to complete the tasks I'd want it to. I'd like it to draft the email I want. I'd like it to do the certain research over multiple tabs. I'd like it to go through everything I have. And after use, I want every single use of it to after every single use of it to learn more about me, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to get out of this as a student. Um, Based off of those pain points and those user journeys, we can kind of flesh out what this agent would look like. And we can kind of split that into three categories. We can have a need now category, a can come later category, and something we could kind of try to see for the future. Can I take a few more minutes to flesh out what each of those categories would have inside them? And
Yeah.
is everything all right with what I said in terms of the user journey and pain points?
I have one question. So when you were saying that complete complex task, can you give us an example?
One thing that AI agents struggle with, right, is I can talk to it about, hey, find XYZ sources, right, for XYZ research. Now, the problem is if I want said sources to then be inputted and used to create an essay, there comes the problem, right? If I want certain citations, this is something I struggle with all the time, actually, or I guess wrestling with agents is it'll find the sources, but then it'll fail to mesh them properly into an essay, or it'll find the sources, mesh them properly into essay, but fail to bring it into the correct citations, right? And follow all the previous rules. So that's the kind of, I guess, the smallest of complex tasks. And people have far more complex papers, right? They might want it to access completely different tabs and have multiple steps they want to do. But AI agents are kind of very, I guess, not short-sighted, but they're only able to do like one or two steps or three steps. Nothing really complex. They can't follow like an entire organized system of things. All right. So in terms of what I believe this device should have, it should have large privacy controls. At the end of the day, these are students, so certain information that the school provides to Google or Chromium or to whatever account, I'm assuming Google Classroom situation or something similar to it, should be completely safe because I know agents have a very large defense vulnerability, as revealed by Anthropic's recent news about some attack from, I guess, somewhere in East Asia. And it needs the ability to take in student information, right, in the form of whatever account made by school. And it needs the ability to access assignments or whatever form of assignments that students or teachers make. and it should be able to access their drive, most specifically Docs and PowerPoint, right? Because those are the things students use the most. Either teachers allow students to download their lectures via PowerPoint, or they give them notes, or they take notes in Google Docs. So in terms of what the agent should allow is the ability to cross-check or refer to all of those assignments, drive information provided by the school, and have really big privacy safeguards. And in terms of what could happen or would I would like to see in the I guess a year or so afterwards would be the ability to cross-check multiple tabs. Yes, this is what Atlas and Perplexity do at the moment, but I think Google could take another angle at this simply because, hey, we have this big ecosystem. Does it matter so much if we can't check the tab over, or does it matter more if we can access, Drive and actually have something that separates us from competitors? So it's something that would be nice to see in the future, but I don't think it matters so much in terms of the now and maintaining market dominance, right? Especially if we're trying to target this specific segment of users, which has completely different, I guess, ways to use or completely different uses for the agentic experience. Continuing on that road, I guess ability to deal with multiple tabs, and I guess the ability to check with rubrics, right? So as we talked about earlier, a major problem was ability to deal with certain steps or certain requirements, right? And you'd have to repeatedly prompt LLMs and agents to deal with these steps. So I guess a way to deal with that would be to have a rubric. Let me just rephrase that. The ability to insert rubrics, right? The ability to have the agent continuously reference it during the entire process so it doesn't make a mistake on one step, right? So that's something that would be nice to have. And in terms of the good halves in the very far future, we could have voice controls. And what would be really cool is if we can use things like the Neuralink, right? And have it have far more access to our information. And obviously, there might be some privacy controls and related to that. But the more it knows about you, the more personalized the experience, and the less you have to do as a person. So instead of having to, use voice commands, instead of having to go, hey, please do this and type that out, you could do it almost instantly. And you could also check your work if you want to. You could have the email flash in front of you in terms of whatever interface Neuralink uses, and you could check that out and be like, oh, perfect, confirm, 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 by like even blinking, right? And that's kind of how I would frame the MVP. I can go into metrics to talk about how I would see this as a success.
Before you dive into metrics, just out of curiosity, I think the three solutions make sense to me. I'm curious for the voice control or for the Neuralink partnership. Let's just like be totally moonshot here. Like, how much confidence do you have in terms of Google having a partnership with Neuralink? And what do you think are the stuff that we could offer as Google?
I can look into this and I can go further in depth into this in a second, but I guess off the top of my head, the things I'm thinking are yes, at the end of the day, we are Google. We are, I guess, one of the leading tech giants. And in terms of Neuralink, they're a relatively small startup. Yes, they have, or yes, their CEO is Elon Musk, and yes, they have the backing of financial giants like Tesla. But when the game is information and the game is also information distribution, we are currently kings, right? And so I think a partnership wouldn't really be refused by Elon Musk just because of our ecosystem. And if we have access to, I get, as I talked about earlier, a platform which is used by people since they are in fifth grade, for example, me till now, and even in the future, that's something Neuralink would 100% like to take advantage of in comparison to just what the data they can, I guess, they could extract data from you, right? And they have the ability to use their own software, but why not be able to use our platform and populate, Drive, Docs, et cetera, with my own thoughts and everything I want that they can extract with Neuralink, right? You need something to populate, you need a platform to populate with your thoughts, and that's what we kind of offer.
That makes sense to me. No need to dive deeper. Let's jump to metrics.
Initial North Star I thought of at the very beginning, which was, I guess, more agentic use per person. We could, I guess, go a little deeper based off of our current user segments. So the first thing I have off the top of my mind would be assignments completed with agents. And at the end of the day, students do complete assignments at school. It's kind of the number one benchmark of how they proceed throughout every class. Every class is composed of assignments, quizzes, or assignments which could be homework, quizzes and tests, all of which are assignments, right? So having an idea of how many assignments are completed with agents per student is kind of very reflective of not even per student. We could change that to per school, how much the agent is, I guess, working or how much usage is being reached per school is nice to know because if it works, people will use it. And if people would rather not use it per assignment, they won't. So it's kind of a really nice benchmark to see who's using our stuff and if it's worthwhile to them. And if if teachers and professors are making students use XYZ agents, that shows that I guess they like it and they're making their students use it. And I guess another key metric that we could look into would be how many times these agents actually reference certain docs or PowerPoints, right? If we're hedging our bets on our ecosystem, and our entire argument is, hey, we're Google's ecosystem. The reason why we have an edge over Perplexity and Atlas is because we have the ability to access our Drive and our chats and our PowerPoint. We want to know how many times we actually use them. If a student asks a question, how many times are these things actually referenced, right? How strong is our advantage? Because right now we're kind of making an educated assumption, and we want to be able to confirm that with an MVP through our should haves as soon as possible. And I guess in a more long-term metric we could look into would be more institutions reaching out to Google for partnerships. If this works, and teachers are very loud about when things succeed, right? Professors are too. I've realized that with my past internship over at Boodlebox. People like to champion ideas and champion products that they're really big fans of. So institutions will start reaching out. This happened all the time with Boodlebox. We'd get, people from Yale emailing us, right? And if this happens to Google, this is a very clear sign of success. And I guess those are kind of the metrics I'd look at. Having just made a small blueprint of my get to market strategy, I could kind of delve into it. So the goals would be to partner to I guess, really partnerships with a few pilot schools. And by a few, I was thinking around 30 or so, just to kind of get this out there. And the pilot schools would be chosen specifically based off of their affinity to technology, as well as, I guess, where they are in terms of ranking. So obviously, we reach out to universities, things like Yale, Stanford, universities who are, I get more inclined to go into the STEM stuff. So we won't be like reaching out to like Tulane or something. Um, Also, at the end of the day, our user segmentation wasn't just college students, it was all students. So we could go into certain partnerships with like Thomas Jefferson High School, which is the number one public school in America and also is very STEM related, as well as magnet schools throughout like Loudoun County, as well as the West Coast, aka targeting places which again have a large affinity for tech and where students are already using AI agents, right? There've already been certain papers done on how students in these areas in Northern Virginia, as well as in the Bay Area, are already using this in most of their assignments. So we kind of want to target these places where students don't need to learn about AI. They don't need to learn how to deal with agents, and also similar situation for professors and teachers. We're not trying to have to teach that. We're trying to introduce this and have people or users be, I guess, excited about it. And the success of the success, which can be shown through, I guess, number of queries, as I said before. So if a student reaches, say, 100 queries per year, right? Or if we reach 100 queries per year per student, right? And XYZ university, we could see that as a sign to expand because usage is so high. And we could reach out to other institutions throughout America or the area. And if, because of, I guess, their high prestige, that's kind of the reason why I chose these institutions. If people were to see them or see the success of all these top tier institutions like Thomas Jefferson and Yale and stuff like that, they'll like to adopt. And so instead of reaching out initially for pilot programs and partnerships, we'll start getting not invitations, but requests to join relatively early, which is kind of the goal here.
How do you think?
Uh, I feel like I repeated myself a lot, which was kind of something I know I did because I repeated myself a lot. It's just something I did. I wasn't familiar enough with Atlas I just didn't use it. I use Perplexity all the time, so I had no reason to use it. And I was like, oh, I have to download this entire new platform. I kind of don't want to do that. And I kind of tied that in, or I tried to tie that in about how, oh, people really don't like to leave ecosystems because it's just more work and they're not really a fan of it. It's kind of how people say, oh, Claude's so much better than OpenAI, but at the end of the day, I made my OpenAI account first, right? So I'm not going to just go hop over, right? Unless I have a reason to do so. So I guess lack of information in terms of knowing how Atlas works I could have worked on my metrics. Also, when I just in terms of designing the agentic experience, I didn't really know what exactly I look for because whenever I think of agents, I see them as like a really simple tool about like, oh, reference these tabs and do this random thing for me. So when designing an entire experience, I was kind of like shot and how exactly we'd be better than competitors. So I tried to drive in like the ecosystem thing,
Hmm.
but I don't know if I drove it in enough, right? And other than that, I think I ran out of questions in the beginning, clarifying questions. I like kind of just didn't know what to ask because of how much I knew about it. Also, the framing of the question kind of made it so I had less questions because it was like, oh, I have to make a proposal and that could be about anything. So I'm like, okay, right. And I made the assumption that it'd be about, or I guess you told me that it would be about a competitor or putting stuff into Chromium to make it a competitor. So I didn't really know what more questions to ask. So I kind of made that random question. I even forgot the question because of how useless it was. I just wanted to put a question out there.
As the interviewer, I can tell that you don't use Atlas or you haven't tried it yet. So you can't just like throw this into the interviewer, meaning like if the interviewer is experienced and if the interviewer is happy today, and I can give you hint, right? If you talk about like doing reference or like summarizing the website, I can give you a hint saying like, what about agentic experience, right? But what if the interviewer isn't happy today? So you have to make sure at the very beginning of this question, if you don't know that much about Atlas, just confirm with the interviewer. The interviewer can provide you more information. So you can say that, oh, I don't use Atlas that much. I guess you don't use Atlas that much because you mentioned Perplexity, but don't let the interviewer guess, right? So you can just say that, oh, I don't use it that much. I know they launched something like this 3 weeks ago, but I just want to make sure that we are on the same page. So these are the new functions or new features that launch from Atlas. Am I understanding correctly? Is there anything else that you want to add? So the interviewer know that, oh, you have an information gap. It is fine. I can fill that in. So that's one. And let's start from the very beginning, where we are talking about like strategy part. I do like your communication that you have this back and forth with the interviewer. So the interviewer is like very happy to provide you more hints. And you, come on, you're likable. So the interviewer, yeah, will provide you more hints, right? But you have to do like be more self-sufficient in your answer. So for example, like for example, from the strategy point of view, right? You are trying to be more structured from like first talking about competitors and for each competitors their strengths and weaknesses, right? I get it that you're trying to use that framework and then you talk more about product features. There are something else that you could mention. For example, the finance side, right? Historically, Chrome is known for paying for go-to-market channels, right? Chrome or Google pay Apple several billion dollars every year to make sure that the Chrome is the default browser, right? So you should talk about finances. Google have last year, I think, 2024, they have more than $350 billion annual revenue. While this is something that OpenAI, a company like OpenAI or Perplexity will be dream of, right?
Mhm.
To have that kind of money. So what kind of channel can Google own or can pay for to take over ChatGPT, right? So that might be something that you want to think about. And also you mentioned that uh, Gemini auto summary, Google AI mode, and Google has the exposure and go-to-market channels, right? But how should we leverage the exposure? I think here you can get a little bit deeper to talk about like whether there are potential partnerships we should do, or whether there are like channels that we could buy out, right? So for example, right now you can access Google Drive from ChatGPT. Why? Because accessing Google Drive on ChatGPT is still adding value to Google Drive, right? But if you are trying to use ChatGPT directly as your browser, then you're not adding additional value to Chrome or like Google system. So that is something that ChatGPT is trying to do to basically stop the source from the very beginning, right? So we're not benefiting any Google stuff. If ChatGPT is doing that, then you can do that too to ChatGPT, right? So let's say if you're very like um um anti-democracy, then you could pay for other browsers, and you can't like use let's say the new AI browser from ChatGPT, right? Something like that. So there are relationships that we can buy. So that probably could be something that you could mention. And also, you talk about OpenAI has the attention, a huge user base. What should Google do with the attention, right? So OpenAI has always been because they have this is a new company, this is a hot company. Um, the launch video on YouTube from OpenAI for Atlas have 1.7 million views,
No,
while
you could just get rid of that.
well, no, that is too much. But I'm trying to say that the Gemini on Chrome has, I think, only 400K views. It says something, right? You can't do that. This is like on freaking YouTube. You have to do something about it. Either you can recommend, let's say, Gemini on Chrome video when users are watching Atlas video, right? Or you can do something with your algorithm to make sure that you recommend it
Mm.
more, right? So there are so many things that you could have done to limit that attention or to improve attention on your own product launch. So that's the beginning when you were talking about competitors. You should talk about finances. Later talk about partnership community. I was trying to give you hint. Usually, first of all, usually this type of question, if the interviewer asks you, let's say a strategy question, right, and they are not talking about like what type of feature that you want to build on top of Chrome, then the strategy question is probably taking 15 minutes. And if it has a product design question, meaning that the interviewer asks you what type of feature do you want to build on top of it, then that is going to take another 30 minutes. So this is just a rough reference for you because
Mm.
I feel like at the beginning we were talking about what type of feature that you want to build. And then you talk about reference Google ecosystem and personalized experience. That end at 15-minute mark. And I was like, dude, you can't answer the question like this. Like you're not expecting the interviewer to like hung up your call at 15-minute mark, right? So that's why I was like, let's dive one step further. What about agentic experience? And do you think we need to build something on that, right? So that's kind of the reference. So I would expect you to go with the flow like yourself. For example, what the additional feature that you want to provide as Chrome AI browser, and imagine a new experience. You talk about partnership, but we could also think about what are the other synergies that Google can do. You talk about Google Drive, right? But is there anything on the top of funnel source? Let's say right now, if you can do agentic experience on websites, like you don't even need users to type anything on the Chrome browser. You can just do it built in with like Pixel phone or Google Home, right? That is something that you can go even on like topper in the funnel. So you can stop traffic from going to ChatGPT or the potential of going to ChatGPT at all, right? So, and also, for example, the agentic experience on Atlas is pretty much the original ChatGPT operator. Um,
Mm.
and that experience is very notoriously bad in the password. But Google built in all the password in the Google in the Chrome browser, right? Can we leverage something like that? Every time you need a user to confirm the password to input in a certain website, but you literally have all the password, like can we do a better experience on that site, right? So um, this whole experience, I feel like later on you're more um, into this like product design type of answer and you go with like let's say the mission, the target user, the pain points, and everything. But I would expect you to take more control in your answer, and you start to doing that like before I ask you about it.
Mm. Wait. So it was a strategy, not product insight, right?
I was expecting you to just talk about the whole thing because originally the
Mm.
first question we were talking about what do you want to do with Chrome, right? And what feature you want to build. And then you end the conversation at you want to build
Oh, okay.
references.
So initially I thought it was just a strategy question. You're like, hey, what proposal would you make? And I was like, oh, just leverage this stuff, I guess. And I was Okay, okay. So I
Yeah,
could.
I get it. So like
Mhm.
for interviewer side, there are different type of interviewers having different type of communication style. So
Mhm.
an easier way for you is to ask the interviewer. You will be like, oh, I can dive deeper if you want, or I can just like pop up some ideas for you just for this quick like strategic side of things. So you can clarify this.
Instead of having to be asked by the interviewer, I could just
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it
yeah.
myself,
You don't
basically.
want the interviewer to feel like, oh, is that it? You want the interviewer to know that, oh, you thought about that, and this is what
Mhm.
you're going for.
Oh, in terms of what you were saying earlier, it's like I kind of just avoided doing pot shots at ChatGPT and stuff,
Yeah.
and I should make pot shots, right? Because
Yeah.
that shows that like okay, that's fair. Because I was just focused on like, oh, how could we make our experience equivalent or like other stuff when it's just like, why do that when you could just still do that? I know still do that, but like do other
You
things
could
as
just ask.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. So the tip for answering any type of product questions in your interview is to make sure that like you don't like there are always like questions that you are not feeling comfortable with and you do not know 100% of the products or whatever they mentioned.
Mhm.
But what you want to make sure is you and the interviewer are on the same page. So the interviewer know what you know and what you are afraid of and what you don't know. So by tr providing that transparency, the interviewer can make sense of your thought process.
Do you think that's like a turn off to the interviewer in the very beginning, or do you think they're fine with that?
Oh, they're fine with that.
It's
They're
like, oh,
just,
this person doesn't know about Atlas. It just came
I
out.
mean, if
Everyone's
you
on it.
know about it, it would be better. But the thing about this type of interview, we're trying to look at your thinking process. We're not looking at your domain knowledge, especially
Mhm.
for Google APM program, right? Let's say if you're hiring a product director in Chrome, and now you don't know what LS is doing, that is problematic. But you are APM and
Mhm.
Google has so many products, right? Right now, I could also ask you, let's say, improve my previous question, improve Google Keep. A lot of people don't even know that Google has this
No
product.
idea what Google
Yeah,
Keep
so
is.
you have to ask, right? So you have to make sure that the interviewer know what you know and what you don't know. So then they can evaluate your thinking process like more objectively.
Yeah, versus thinking you know about stuff, but you just suck.
Yes. And then coming into the product design question, you have a great framework, and still I like your communication style. When you talk about the target user, you choose people who are still in school because of the current relationship with academic institutions, which is valid. I think you could have more supportive evidence. So, for example, you could talk about TAM, right? You have a big market to go to, and also Google historically is paying attention in education. So back then, when Google have the Chromebook, right? They offer free Chromebook to
I used one of those in school, actually.
yes. So like Google have this relationship with the education institutions, and they want to do something like that, right? For the purpose of don't do evil. And also, you mentioned that you want to have short-term solutions to get the market and also long-term roadmap, right? If you are choosing people who are still in schools, by having those partnership, it is also faster for you for in the execution, right? So when you launch anything, it is faster for you to and also previously, like I feel like there is a gap between your strategy question and your product design. In your strategy, you were talking about like what type of users are Perplexity or OpenAI targeting, right?
Mhm.
And how do people know about their browsers? But then when you choose your user segment, you could have mentioned this, right? And refer to what you mentioned before. What are the target audience for OpenAI and Perplexity, and how should we compete, right? So is it entering a new market that they haven't tackled, or we just compete head to head, right? So what is your strategy? What is your standpoint there? So I
But
think
is it okay to be like, hey, we're not going to mess with that target market just because it's so small and we could target students? Or should I be like, hey, we should compete in this situation. We should target, software users. We should target the tech market, stuff like that.
I mean, if you're talking about Chrome versus Perplexity, then I don't think it is necessary to tackle that market at all. Because if you're talking about startup people or like the tech nerds, they're gonna try out different browsers anyways. So it doesn't really matter. And that market is so small, and you don't even need to think about it because you were Google, right? So
Mhm.
um, it doesn't matter, like, but when you compete with OpenAI, it doesn't matter like which direction you are going with, as long as you have very supportive evidence, pretty much like open to choose whatever that makes sense for you and the interviewer. And when you talk about pain points, I add a. So first of all, the reason why I add a follow-up question to say like, can you give us some examples about complex text? Is because like first of all, like when you talk about pain points, you don't sound painful. Like,
What do
dude,
you mean by that?
you need to sound painful. You need to have a good storytelling to make sure that the interviewer is on the same page with you. And the interviewer, when the interviewer hear your pain points, she will be like, oh my God, I think that is such a pain point. Let's tackle it together kind of vibe.
I think it was a situation of me like I was trying to deal with like the user journey because I'm designing something from scratch, right? But I also wanted to tackle pain points. So I was like, what does this thing need to do? And then I was like, also what hurts? And I
Yeah.
kind of like meshed them really weirdly. And I guess when I was talking about it, I sounded very neutral and numb. So I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, all the interviewers have this checklist of whether you have user empathy. So you have to have user empathy and good storytelling. So I can be on the same page with you on the pain points. But when I asked the follow-up question, you did great examples and show that you are very proficient in using agent, and you tried the agents out. So that is a green flag. And
Yeah.
also, when you talk about solutions, and when I ask a follow-up question about the potential partnership between Neuralink and Google, you also had a great answer for the follow-up question. You are very confident. You are like, sometimes interviewer just kind of like stress you to make sure that I push you to the best potential. So you did well in that. Another thing is you cannot say, even you have quote unquote, you cannot say we're copying.
I thought that's like a known, like everyone knows that. Like, oh, we're copying them.
Dude, no.
So
Okay.
the guy from like TikTok and Reels was like, we're gonna do something
Yes,
similar.
we're building this because users have this pain points on Instagram. We're not building this to copy TikTok. Also, just for your context, I think you can like dive deeper into what OpenAI launched and like their launch video and everything. But in their video, they kind of have this hypothesis of like the browser tabs are not as important. So that's why you can think about them reinventing this user journey to put all the tasks related to browser or like websites into different chats.
hmm Okay,
But
no, that makes sense.
but
But
is that true? Right? I think that's a very bold hypothesis. Like if you're saying that the tabs are not important, like come on, how many tabs do you have on your Chrome browser? You have a million tabs on your Chrome browser, and this is such a disruption like in the user journey, right? So
hmm
guess what? This goes back to the technology adoption cycle, Hamzeh. Uh,
mm
since the new startup is trying to invent a new user journey, right? But you as Google know that what billions of users do on your browser today.
And I could
So
just be like, this is what the current situation of it, so we could just take advantage of that and we could leave
yes,
them to try to
you
I
don't need
guess,
to teach
imagine what they want to reimagine.
exactly. You don't need to teach billions of people a new user journey. You could have just when I have like 20 tabs on my browser, you could have like pop up something saying like, what are you trying to do with these tabs? Is there anything I can help you with? Right. So with integrating this type of experience, you're not disrupting their existing user journey. You're taking advantage of it. Right.
See, I would have known this if I watched the launch video.
You should have watched the launch video.
I should have watched the launch video, I know.
And also Google is very pro, like you are on top of things. So you know what happened in the tech world, what is the latest
I'll be on top of things. Don't trust me, trust me.
yeah.
See, you could have asked the question. I could have been like, Atlas? What's Atlas? I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I pressed the X button.
Yeah, the you will depends on the interviewer's mood that day. If you're asking that question, the interviewer will just be hung up on you.
Oh, and in terms of, do I talk too fast? Because I hear that a lot from a lot of people.
On that is so different interviewers have different speed of communication. The trick is to make sure that you're at the same speed with the interviewer, so the interviewer can understand you. If the interviewer talk fast, usually they can uh, process information faster than other people as well.
Okay, that's fair. Just try to like mimic them, I guess,
Yes.
or mirror. Oh, and you brought up the get to market strategy part. Should I have expanded on that more? I just wanted to give like a very brief idea because you asked me at the end, like, hey, anything else? And I was like, oh, I could jot some thoughts down. I came up with something very like bare bones. But should I have expanded on that or?
Mm. It depends on the interviewer. So this time we don't have enough time to cover this. When you got to that part, it is already like 45 minutes-ish, so I think it is too long. But if you have time and the interviewer is interested, then they probably will ask for more questions.
Okay, okay, that's fair.
Any other question or feedback from the audience?
I just have a very quick question. Good job, Hamza. Like, in terms of the go-to-market strategy, I wonder since it's for Google, right? In terms of the approach, I feel like you use a very kind of like startup approach, but rather like how do you, so there are different companies, like for example, Meta, Google, Perplexity, and since you're doing for each company, how do you like give that sense that you're representing that company specifically and getting pulling resources they have specifically and like not like generically, like one for all, but rather be niche, if that's a clear question.
Oh, and I have a similar question to, I guess, like go on top of that after that one's answered.
Um, I'm trying to make sure that I understand your question clearly, Annie. So you're saying that does it matter that the go-to-market strategy is doing Google style?
Beyond go-to-market strategy, like everything, like how do you make it sound more like, we're doing it for Google, like kind of like, intentionally, but not too intentionally.
Usually, I think the safer way to answer the question, like by Google style, you say it in a way within the Google ecosystem, right? So you're talking about the business resources you have as Google. But you don't say something like, let's say Google always like, let's say launch marketing campaign in a very like they spend a lot of time planning for it, right? And also for their IO conference, they do it once a year. So they have to have a lot of like energy to plan for an actual conference to launch products. It has been very controversial inside Google. Some of the employees like this is how Google do things. Some of the employees might not. Some of the employees will always feel like, see, ChatGPT did this thing that they have this 12-day launch party at the end of the year, right? They want to be always on the headline. But for Google, you spend like months planning for a marketing campaign. Is that worth it? And by the time that we launch our marketing campaign, all the attention are on OpenAI. So it is controversial, and um, so you don't exactly need to do what Google is doing, but also the interviewer themselves might have preference. So I would say the safer way is to talk about Google's resources, but don't dive too deep on how Google currently do things.
I guess my question is similar, but not like really. It's kind of like based off of how XYZ company does things. So when my friend Christine interviewed for Meta and it came to like the metrics portion of her product insight question, and the interviewer was like, hey, what product insight or what metrics would you use to track success? And she chose a specific metric, and the person was like, oh, that's a terrible metric. We don't have access to that metric because that's in another team. How exactly are you supposed to know things like that?
I think that's a weird interviewer.
Okay, that's fair. Because she literally said, because I was in the room for that interview, and the guy literally was like, "Oh, that's not a good metric. That'd be in another team. We have no access to that, and that'll take like a long time to get."
Yeah, I feel like if you want to press the interviewee to think more, sure, you can give
Mhm.
this hint, right? But you cannot like reject that interviewee because of this, because the interviewee has no knowledge about like how you manage data assets internally. So, yeah, it depends on how the interviewer is directing the interview.
Oh, also, are you a fan of the because I know a lot of people have different frameworks in terms of the product insight question, and my framework is kind of like follow user journey, then talk about the necessary stuff to actually like build out a product. Do you think that's a decent enough framework or not really?
I think. you need to make your framework more complicated. I think
Mm.
you like your framework right now is too generic right now.
Hmm.
So you probably want to practice with more people and see what are the common questions they have when it comes to your framework. So for example, I just asked you to give us some examples on the complex text and voice control, right? So the reason why I asked those questions is because I want to have like check on your user empathy or check on your like BD ability of like having business development and like talk go one shot and think about Neuralink versus Google, right? So in your framework, you probably want to remind yourself or the bullet points on the user pain points or the solutions, have some examples to show empathy or other like criterias, right?
So
So
delve deeper into the categories, but
yeah,
do you think categories should be changed is my big question. Like, do you
I
think I'm missing a category, or do you think like I shouldn't do the before use, during use, after use, or the should have now, can have later, and then in the future situation?
I think your current framework doesn't have problem. It's just too generic. So you
Okay.
want to see what are the like skill set the interviewers are looking for, and then you can make your framework more complicated. So you kind of like remind yourself, for example, at the beginning you mentioned competitors and anything, everything for the strategy, and maybe like later you talk about when you talk about metrics, you probably want to have North Star metrics, your guardrail metrics, and your qualitative metrics. And then when you talk about go to market, you want to talk about your channel, you want to talk about your messages. Or like that is how you make your framework more complicated because people are asking you different type of questions.
So just go deeper, basically,
Yeah.
instead of just kind of brushing things with like very generally.
So usually it's always happens that we usually do not have data of everything which is talked about, number of users, market share, and everywhere. So shall we give an assumption on how we came upon this that number, or we can blindly say, okay, I assume this much thing. ChatGPT has around 800 million users. If I say it's around 500, that's a margin of say 35%, and it sounds very bad that we are not updated. So I want
Yes.
to tackle this.
Yeah, that's a
And
great point. I forgot about that point. Yes, when you say five, I feel like
Wait, does the 500 million, 800 million, is it that crazy of a difference? I'm gonna be honest, guys, that doesn't sound so stark and crazy to me. Because
uh,
I was gonna say 1 billion. I was like, there's no way there's 1 billion. So I just like halved it.
I think that's a good point from Yogesh. I'm not sure the current numbers from Google, but I'm pretty sure when ChatGPT has like I think 600 million, Google was still more than ChatGPT. So I don't know whether Google is more than ChatGPT when it is 800 million. So you probably want to check on that.
Oh, is it not? That'd be very embarrassing if it's not.
ChatGPT has around 75% market share in browser now in queries, as far I know.
All right, so only use numbers I have confirmed. I'll make a list. I'll make a list, which isn't so difficult. I'll make a list.
You
I
don't
guess
talk
the
like you don't talk like tech people basically. Like you and that is exactly what Google is looking for. Like if you're talking about all what you just mentioned in your answer to Meta, I think Meta will have like way more tolerance because they focus on users more. And if you're interviewing Google, then you have to make sure that you know what is happening in the industry and like what is the newest technology out there.
It's okay.
So
It'll happen. Stuff's been busy, like.
so, so you mean Google is more toward business mind creativity, but Meta is more towards tech.
because Meta is doing social media, so they focus a lot on like user empathy. So for example, like the pain points, are they persuasive? Can you make sure that the interviewer is on the like the same page with you? They pay a lot of attention on that, whether you can tell a good story on that. Google, they care a lot about technology and moonshot ideas. Um, because that is basically how Google was founded and their culture.